thank you all for attending. My name's Jeff Brimmer, and I'm the interim city manager. And so we called this meeting this evening for an opportunity for the staff to give you a presentation on the two subjects that are on the agenda for tonight. That is the roundabout at Floresta and Southbend, and also to talk about the Canal Park. So what you have before you is the agenda for this evening. We're going to run the meeting as we would run any normal meeting. What we're going to do is, at first, we're going to give a presentation on the roundabout, and that will be followed up by a presentation of the information and facts relative to Canal Park. After the presentation is concluded, there's two tables in the back, and we're going to break for 15 minutes. If you have questions, the Canal Park question is over here, the roundabout is over there. Please feel free to fill out a question. If you can't, we have people at the table that will help you out. And then also, if there'll be a final section, and that's entitled Public to be Heard, that will give you an allowance of up to 5 minutes to come on up and give your position and your opinion, and that's in the table in the back. So that's how the meeting will progress. I do want to say just a couple of things about the folks that are up here. This is the staff, okay? This is the administration. These folks here have been directed to prepare information and plans for both the roundabout and for the Canal Park. They're not criminals, they're not villains, they're doing that which they have been directed to do. So I would ask that you keep that in mind when the presentation unfolds. I would also ask that you treat them with some civility, you treat them with the same type of respect that you would expect us to provide to you. And so I would ask you please to keep that in mind so that we can conduct an orderly meeting. You'll have the opportunity to be heard, but remember, those who want to be heard, keep your comments to as limited as you can so we can allow as many people as possible to give their comments. So with that thought in mind, I thank you very much for your attendance, and on with the show. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm Brian Merson, and I am one of the principals of American Consulting. I understand that the folks that were involved in the boat ramp park will probably get a strike against them, and the people involved in the roundabout get a strike against them. Since I've been involved in the design of both, I'm already at 2 strikes. And so what I intend to do is provide you a short presentation. I've prepared about 10 slides for each of the pieces to provide some summary. I'm assuming some of it maybe we'll go back to during questions and answers if it can be of help to us. However, I think what's important as we get through this, show you what we've got on both jobs, some of the history of the two, how they would operate, and leave it open from that point in time to let you guys ask the questions you need. So let's first start with the roundabout discussion and the initiative. We're blowing it here in terms of what the overall view of this is, in terms of the limits of the development relative to the roundabout, but let me go more specifically in terms of its improvements. It's basically going to be developed, and it has been designed to handle the future traffic projections. So it's going to handle not only the traffic from 2013, but also 2035. It will accommodate the traffic from the boat ramp park, if in fact that is constructed as well. And in fact, all of the modeling was tested both ways, with the traffic and without, as well as the future 4-laning of Floresta. So if in fact that was to take place, the roundabout will accommodate those. There'll be storage lane as part of the extension to the west for the boat ramp park. And then there'll be the landscaping, the community entry features, the replacement of the existing signage that's out in place, as well as some dry retention areas for stormwater. They're not wet ponds in the corners. They'll be dry retention, which means there will be water there after a high-intensity storm, and a few hours later that will then be absorbed or drained off accordingly. When you first discuss roundabouts, the very first issue is the initial concerns is, oh my God, we got roundabouts. And it's nothing new here or anywhere else. We provided you, I think, a brief document about Don't Be Square. It was a national paper talking about roundabouts. I encourage you to look through that. But what's really important is you'll notice here the difference of before and after. Just generically speaking, there's extreme negative and concern about a roundabout before they're constructed. And you'll notice after how those concerns are just not in place. That in fact, people become very comfortable with them once they're comfortable with how to operate them or how they operate through them. So let's look at the master plan as what we're proposing. What's in the yellow or in the orange here is what we're proposing to develop. But let's really zoom in and talk about really what that roundabout's going to look like. So you can see this is what would be constructed at the intersection. And you can see there's lanes and different assignments, and the very first thought is, oh my goodness, what lane am I supposed to be in if I want to get through this thing? And it's a relatively simple process. So if you're northbound and you want to go and continue on Floresta to the east, you get in the right lane. If you want to either go north or toward the west, you get in the left lane, kind of like what you're doing now, and that is the through and the left turn lane. If you're on Floresta and you're moving south to southbound, you get in your left lane, you move around the roundabout, and you move to the south. And if you either want to go on through to the west or to the north, you get in the right lane. Those lanes will be marked, and there'll be a sign on the edge of the road, just as you do in any other intersection. So let's look at terms of the design-wise. This looks rather complicated, but what's important here is that when we laid out the design of the roundabout, you'll notice it's laid out for both trucks and trailers and fire trucks to ensure that they can go around these roundabouts without running over curbs or going into the wet areas. And you'll see that it has been designed to accommodate those. I want to run through the simulation of the traffic, if you can. This is the current traffic counts that are in the afternoon hours. And this is the realistic numbers. We went out and made the counts and developed those. This is what's currently occurring at the intersection today. And we'll see that there is some backup toward to the east, as you know, and during the peak, in place. When the roundabout is in place and it's constructed, immediately this is what that traffic would look like. And we've loaded the traffic from the boat ramp park also into this 2013 analysis. So this is actually the operation. Whenever we lay out a roundabout and we see the traffic flowing relative to what you see as a stop and go and the signal, people say that can't be. That we had all of that dwell time and people were stopping, and then all of a sudden there isn't any. And the question is, how come? I can just tell you, this is how roundabouts work. They're basically a yield. There's a right on red. In this case, it's a right on yellow. You come up to the roundabout, you yield. If there's no traffic roundabout, you proceed forward. Let's look at what happens in terms of 2023. So in 2023, this is the increased volume of the regional projections that we've added on to that. And in 2023, you can see the roundabout operates almost identical because, in fact, it's been designed for 2023 traffic volumes. And you can see there's little or no queuing in any of the direction. And we put our professional seal on these drawings to tell you this is what's going to happen should these be the actual projections. Let's talk about if we don't build the roundabout. So this is what the traffic looks like in 2023 with a signalized intersection. Even when we widen Floresta to a 4-lane facility, you can see that the traffic signal itself creates a significant amount of queuing in front of the residential properties. We can't stop that. It's a 90-second cycle, maybe shorter, but in that period of time, you're going to get the queuing of vehicles. And that's the beauty of the roundabout. We're not asking you to simply take us at our word. However, we do encourage you to take a look at some of the literature that's available to you, as long as the brochures, to see these work. We're comfortable proposing this, and we're pleased that the council has driven many of them, have done their investigations, they're in support as well. All right, so let's just talk about the schedule briefly. The construction's about $500,000. The nice part about that certainly is we don't have to construct a signal. We don't have to construct electrical. And so, isn't it interesting, these roundabouts work really well when the power goes out. They continue to operate just as well. Hope to have that completed, begin this summer is when we hope to begin the construction. Hope to have it completed in the fall. So, let's talk about the boat ramp part. I think we spent enough time, we'll do about the same. I didn't use the right term, but I think we all know what we're talking about here. Let's talk historical for a moment, because I think putting it in the perspective of where it's come from and where we're going is important. If we looked at 1999 in the Southbend Neighborhood Master Plan, the master plan already identified the Canal Park as to be developed as an active park with boat access back in the late 90s. Okay. Currently, in the city, there are only 2 park locations that offer access. Veterans Park and Old Hammock. Old Hammock doesn't have access to the ocean. Of the 6,500 trailer boats, those are the only access points that the city provides to their citizen, and obviously a significant deficit exists relative to people wanting to put their boats in that have boats here in the city, that own them. So historically, let's see what happened. In 2004, there's a boat ramp selection study. We have a copy of that here if we want to go into the detail. But there were 39 sites that were identified to be evaluated. 5 of them were ultimately viable sites, and they were brought forward. In the preliminary report, the Westmoreland site, kind of sitting on the preserve, was identified as really the highest potential. It was the largest of those sites with a decent location. But the significant environmental impacts associated with it relative to adding those ramps into that preserve basically provided a fatal flaw from the perspective of the Department of Environmental Regulations state level. And Canal Park was actually recommended for several reasons. One was historical use. In the historical perspective, boat ramps were always provided at that location. The man-made waterway, from DEP's perspective and the local and permitting agencies, reduced the environmental impacts considerably. The lack of residential houses immediately adjacent to the property relative to many of the other sites that were being considered, in fact, was very attractive, and certainly the ability to obtain those permits. It came forward as a recommendation to the council, and they approved that recommendation in the spring of 2005. A lot has happened since then, whether it be press releases or news articles, whether it be the public workshops or the regulatory permitting in terms of all their notice and regulatory elements. A lot of these have all been in place, whether they were in the newspaper. These are a few of the articles that appeared, as well as the public notices that were considered. Or if I put the history of the elements, I've identified here each of the times that the item has come in front of the council, whether it be in 2005, the direction of the additional of the Oak Ridge parcels, whether it be the workshop in 2006, or the council's position on expanding the number of boat lanes from 2 to 4 in 08, whether it be the direction of the council in terms of modifying the easement to accommodate the boat ramp park in 2009, or whether it be the Water Management District in 2011 sending out letters of intent for their intent to issue the permit for the actual boat ramp park. In 2011, they were sent on 8/11 of 2011, or whether it be the approval of the mitigation bank for all the credits that were necessary to mitigate any impacts per the Water Management District. We've just identified some of those dates. The workshop occurred in September of '06, and I've identified here is what that workshop. There were multiple comment sheets, and as a matter of fact, I actually was there too. And so I was actually part of this back in '06, as well as the input from the Florida DEP, indicating the strong preference for this particular location due to being on the C-24 canal, and providing us the input that it was a permittable project relative to the other sites that had been considered. All right, so let me talk just quickly about the characteristics on what is in the park and what isn't. It's 7.5 acres. The land is obviously now owned by the city, all of it in place. We have the utilities that are accessible and will be connected. Don't have the direct residential adjacency, but we do have the easements in between the park and the residential community. And then certainly relative to the access to the man-made waterway, of which currently on the canal we've got about 94 docks that's west of this location and another 19 at east of the location on the canal with existing boat traffic. The actual improvements that are in the park will be the drainage improvements that we've identified. This will be a wet pod in the middle of this park. There will be the wetland areas that will be preserved to the west of the actual improvements in the parking area. The landscape buffer areas. The parking spaces are 74 actually will be provided in this particular case for trailers. There will be 4 boat lane for the ramps, the picnic structures, the restroom facilities as well, and then the nautical theme has been requested to be integrated. These are some pictures of if you will, that type of structure that's under design by the architects as we speak. Let's look at the master plan and some modifications to the master plan based upon some more recent input. Certainly, this lays out the master plan that on the top of the north is to the top, As you can see, the entrance on the left side of this picture. And you'll notice that originally the 10 spaces that are next to the water down where we see large pavilion and small pavilions, those spaces were removed and were replaced with a landscape area to minimize the impacts to the visual across from the canal. You'll notice also that the landscape density has been increased along the northern border, so additional landscaping has been placed on the northern border as well. The fish cleaning station was eliminated from this park, all in terms of what was some of the input from more recent meetings and we're asked to integrate into the actual construction activities. And certainly the operating hours here are from sunrise to sunset, not to be open prior to during the evening. I'm going to throw out just quickly the budget and schedule on this, that it's about $1.8 million was originally programmed. It's important to note that this comes from the Municipal Services Taxing Unit dollar amount, which means the city receives a portion of the revenue that's collected by the county for this purpose. It can only be used for the capital improvements in Parks and Recs Center. It can't be used for operating dollars. So either is expended in a capital project here or another capital, but it must be used for capital. Expect that construction to begin late in the summer rather than earlier in terms of the sequence and scheduling. And it should also be completed sometime in the spring of 2014. So with that, I think we've tried to keep this short. Let's take this to the questions and answers.
All right, so the first question is, how can traffic be handled during the construction of the roundabout? The question is, how can traffic be handled during the construction phase of the roundabout?
As part of the construction documents that are going out to the contractor, there's a section that's called the maintenance of traffic or traffic control plan, but which the contractor has to conform to. And in this particular case, 2 lanes will be maintained in all those streets for the life of this contract, with the exception of a small segment that's just west of southbound, that we may allow the contractor to close that segment for a short period of time between the first 2 streets, allowing them to just deviate around 1 block for during the daytime. There's only 2 lanes. But the plans will have that detailed layout relative to barricades, maintaining of the 2 lanes traffic, and in fact there'll be inspectors on the job site from the city or the city's consultants that will ensure that that MOT plan is complied with. You will also be able to provide a contact number so that if you believe you're out there and something's not being complied with, you'll be able to get with those inspectors immediately so they can direct the contractor to correct their situation.
Okay, the next question is, do you really believe that semis and trucks with boat trailers will move easily through this? Only an engineer would think so. Look at Stewart, it's a mess. Other than that, I like the roundabout.
Well, I guess the answer is yes. I'm a certified planner as well as I'm an engineer. And the very first thing that we found historically in roundabouts is many of the early roundabouts did not provide the required turning movements for the big vehicles, and there was a struggle for many years. The modern day roundabout that you've identified here does in fact handle those vehicles, and we're going to be putting our seals on those to document the fact they do. You know what? Let me follow because, I don't want to go back and forth because I think it's really important. But you're absolutely right. It doesn't work in Stewart. Stewart was one of the early roundabouts that they tried to develop from what was originally quite a mess, Confusion Corner, and they didn't provide for the lane widths, nor did they provide for the type of vehicles that they needed to do in that particular situation. I tell you that this is not Stewart. this particular project is designed does meet the criteria that we need, and we've run the modeling through it. So after it's open, you can come back to me, and then you can tell me that we did the job. Go ahead.
The next question is, who will ultimately make the decision to proceed with the C-24 in the traffic circle? That direction has already been given. The decision has been made years ago with respect to moving forward. The administration's direction is to proceed. So absent of any other decision, these projects are scheduled to proceed, and that's the direction that the administration has received. At the Southbend Lakes Residents Association meeting on 1/8 of 2013, a request was made to do a study of traffic patterns using a more sophisticated traffic signal. Will you present the findings of that study?
I believe that in fact that we've provided you the simulations. I can run them again. These are synchro runs. It's a computer program that takes the volumes, the actual counts that we do in the field, both their turning movements as well as through movements in every direction by lane. And then we in fact placed them in the model. We provided you the analysis of what takes place as a traffic signal, the optimized signalization of that traffic signal, both for 2013 and 2023, as well as how that specific movements would take place through the roundabout. So the simulations we showed you here, we can show them again, but those are in fact the visual results of numbers that I would hand you. If I handed you numbers, you would see level of service on leg B, on one leg is B, level of service was E. Doesn't mean anything to you. Visually, they make a whole lot more sense.
Okay, the next question. Any consideration given to installing a lights system to regulate vehicle traffic onto traffic circle? Like, I'm assuming it's CA and GA, so I'm assuming it's California and Georgia freeway entrance ramps. And also, will the traffic pattern study that was presented this evening be available for review?
Let's talk about ramp metering and what they're really talking about relative to signaling. We don't use ramp metering on local streets. Roundabout, the volumes here in terms of the way this operates, there's no need whatsoever for the ramp metering or the lights associated with this type of movement. This is much more efficient than that. Relative to the traffic report, I know the traffic report was public record and it has been submitted, and we'll be sure that it's available, with a link to the website, with the city's website.
Has any consideration been given to the increase in traffic through the South Bend neighborhood? South Bend Boulevard has become a raceway. Can we have traffic calming areas like Club Med and Westmoreland has in place?
Interestingly, the particular project that involved in the actual roundabout was part of the Floresta improvement project from basically Prima Vista to the canal. It didn't extend to the south. The initial program was the first piece of multiple projects that were being planned, and due to the lack of funding, most of Floresta has been put on hold, and more study relative to traffic calming opportunities south of there have also been put on hold. The concept of a roundabout, though, in many of the locations is in fact being implemented throughout the county and throughout the country as traffic calming. And I wouldn't be surprised if, in fact, once we put this into place, people are going to look for additional traffic calming south of here as well. They should be.
Just a little follow-up on it. This question was raised at the Homeowner Association meeting last week, and subsequent to that meeting, I met with our Public Works and Engineer Director, Patricia Roebling, and she's looking at doing some circles similar to Westmoreland and queuing those up. So she's in that process. We heard it, and we're looking at ways to provide some level of calming, given the fact that we'll never alleviate traffic on there, but maybe we can slow it down a tad. So we're in the process of taking a look at that. South Bend's bridge cannot withstand the abuse of all the traffic from Floresta to Becker, south or north. We did not allow Tesoro to have construction trucks come through South Bend. How will you assure our safety?
Thank you. I'll take this one. Whoops, that's loud. Okay. The first question was about the bridge. We have the Florida Department of Transportation inspects our bridges and gives us annual bridge reports. They are not reporting any serious damage to this bridge or problematic situations that we need to correct. There is some scouring and there's minimal items there, but it's not anything of a health and safety issue. So the bridge is in really good shape and it's structurally sound. We have and will be looking at possible ways to enhance the bridge from a beautification standpoint, but it does not need anything structurally done to it at this point. And that's something that's done to all of our bridges by the state of Florida. They inspect everything for y'all's safety. Second question was about the truck traffic. There is, from our studies that we have so far, and we're continuing to update our studies because we want to have the most accurate information, but there is limited truck traffic actually that's been counted on South Bend. And it's something that we are going to look at and we will continue to observe, but I want to explain to everyone that South Bend Boulevard all the way down to Becker Road is classified as a minor arterial. It was made that way. The road is classified that way to take traffic through and allow the access to your neighborhoods, but to also take traffic through the area. That's the classification on that road. That's another reason why you see the tracts of land owned by the city on each side of that road. That's not all right-of-way. That's actually tracts of land that are access management tracts of land that allow for no driveways to be on that street in order for traffic to move. And as Mr. Brummer said, he is correct. We're looking at possible ways that we can enhance and also provide for possible calming ideas in the area. And we've made that commitment and we will continue to look forward to that commitment. And as we can budget it and as council approves, it's subject to their approval, we will bring those items forward. Thanks.
Well, here's a multiple number question within one, so I'm not sure that we'll be able to answer all of them, but here are the questions. The cost of the original traffic signal at South Bend, was it warranted? So that, we'll bundle that up into one question.
Okay, the actual cost of the signal at right now that's currently out there was about $150,000, and it is not functioning 100% properly, and it's a span wire, it's not a mast iron. It will come down in a storm, and that's not good. That's something we have to look at. We have to look at that situation. And it was warranted. It is definitely warranted. You can see through the modeling that was shown to you tonight how much it backs up. It is absolutely warranted.
And then the two other questions, traffic count, South Bend numbers since Turnpike Exchange, and accident history at South Bend Peru Eagle intersection.
Okay, currently the counts that we have from staff on the South Bend total number combined is 4,864 vehicles per day. Now that's just simply a number. It may not mean anything to someone, but for an arterial that is operating in a regular level of service condition, the road is operating just fine for the amount of traffic that is on it. We are currently studying speeds. We're currently studying the amount of trucks. We're going to continue to do that. I don't have all the information, and we do not have all of the accident reports available yet for our consumption, but Mr. Junjahan is looking into that matter, and he's already got with the police department, so we are investigating.
Will the traffic circle be nicely landscaped? Will the entrance of South Bend be nicely landscaped?
The answer is we believe so. everybody has their opinion. Well, everybody has their opinion on what beautifully landscaped is. I perceive that I think you're going to find this very attractive, and I think it's going to be an enhancement to the community. But I can't help as an engineer to say that we're not building a traffic circle. We're going to be building a modern-day roundabout.
Is the roundabout fully curbed? And why should we cater to only 6,500 people out of 160,000?
I think the first part is, I think you mean like a curb and gutter is what I think they're talking about, and the answer is yes. There will be a curb line around the outside. There will be an island that will be raised in the middle as well. In terms of catering, each of the improvements that we do throughout the community, whether we're focused on the roundabout, in this case trying to provide community enhancements to community, or whether we're dealing with crosstown for other communities, each community we want to provide the improvements, and that's really what the focus of this improvement was to provide improvement in every neighborhood. And so yes, if someone feels that we're catering to this neighborhood, we would certainly hope you would feel that way about this project, because that's what it's for. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. You said voters, right? Well, and let's focus on the boater. It's the boaters.
Because there's also, within this, there's a boat ramp question. You know, that, right. So it relates to, this relates to why should we cater to only 6,500 people out of 160, and can we stop the boat ramp park, which would have been included this next round?
You know, and from the outside looking in, you know, the same question was raised to, do we cater to the 70 skateboarders of 4 million, or do we cater to the, you know, the 2,000 basketball players? The reality is it's one more enhancement to a community, and with the amount of registered voters that you actually have in your community, it's an appropriate amenity that provides service just as a library provides to those very few percentage that actually go to the library.
Who will reinstall the Southbend entryway signs?
The contractor that's contracted to do the actual construction. He'll be doing both the demolition and the installation of the signs. And I think to answer that question, I'm quite sure that the inspectors on the job are not going to approve that until that association says those are acceptable to them.
Actually a continuation from another one, because this is number 5 and 6, but traffic circle lanes width. How will it accommodate boat trailers? Traffic volumes will increase at Peru, Eagle, South Bend, and will not allow exit from Eagle or Peru.
Well, the lane widths are 14 feet. They widen out from the original 11 and 12 to 14 to provide for the turning radiuses of the vehicles around the roundabout. And in addition to the 14 feet each lanes, there's an apron in the center that there's actually a brick or an element that actually widens the center for the larger vehicle to make the turn. Relative to traffic increases, when we run the modeling in here, we're not seeing an increase in the traffic. The question becomes, where's the gap in the traffic? That at a signal you would normally see there's a break and there's no traffic. And the idea of the roundabout is that rather than traffic having one speed that runs through the intersection, the roundabout brings everybody down to 15 to 17 miles an hour. And that really provides us the most value. If in fact there's a concern of coming out of that driveway and making that left turn that comes out that you're basically westbound to southbound, you wish you could easily make the right turn, go around the roundabout, merge right into the traffic and proceed to the south, that if you felt the traffic was heavy. And we do know that in the morning there's a lot of traffic coming over that structure. That's where I'm talking, I'm sorry. So that if in fact you were exiting the driveway, as a street, I'm sorry, the entrance to the development area, and you're exiting that and you're facing west, and you're wanting to make that left turn, right? If in fact, and there's a strong volume of cars coming over that bridge toward the intersection, and if you're not comfortable making a turn because they will be slowing down, you can easily make a right turn and simply zip around the roundabout and proceed to the south without ever having to make a left to cross the traffic. This is, all right, so that's why I got this. So let me pull this up and make sure that if I've misrepresented what's going on, let's make sure that I get it right. Okay, so we're talking about the people coming out of this driveway, right? Forgive me, on the other side of the bridge. Okay, to the south. This is north. This is the waterway, so south of there. Right. And that's part of the discussion that in fact, Patricia was discussing in terms of a break in the traffic flow on South Bend to the south of this. Yeah, and that's the part that they were addressing as a separate issue. I thought you guys were all talking about this entrance here and coming out at this location, so forgive me. I have this one-track focus of my scope, and I apologize. I understand. So I think Patricia was trying to address that.
How wide are the double lanes within the roundabout?
How wide are they?
Wow.
They're listening.
That's awesome. Then this one's a little hard to read, but what I get out of this is the roundabout because of the C-24 boat ramp.
If I may.
And will we be able to use South Bend? Is that right? That's what I read here. Can you read it better? The roundabout is because of C-24.
If that's not the question, they're going to tell us in a minute. Historically, these two projects were not connected. Our involvement in both of them was that the South Bend Roundabout was part of the Floresta initiative for the improvement of Floresta that was segmented into phases. And the first phase was from South Bend to Port St. Lucie Boulevard. And the second was north of that. When funding evaporated for Floresta improvements, the design was in the shelf and in place, then in fact everything was shelved for this particular project. The boat ramp park project was continual under design, including the left turn storage lane that was also being included, and we were designing that as a separate project, and we had done that through the parks. When Greg was here as the city manager, he had identified that there were not significant amount of improvements that were being taken place in this neighborhood, that there was a lot of funds that were expended on crosstown corridor, as well improvements on the western portion of the community. And felt from an equity perspective, was there a way that Public Works could find funding to at least provide the roundabout enhancements? That by doing that, we knew that we had a struggle with the current signals operating. We knew that we had significant queuing. And Public Works were able to identify the funds that they would bring forward to at least provide some enhancement as a roundabout project. And so we were asked to bring that job off the shelf and to move that project forward. When we were putting the quantities together, because as you can see in the picture, that the roundabout actually work kind of stopped right here on the west side. And the project from here up was all part of the Parks project and always had been. By combining the two jobs and by bidding them as a single project rather than two projects, we're able to get ourselves, if you will, a roadway contractor that could do all that roadway construction and all that asphalt laying, as well as the parking lot asphalt, at what we believe would be a considerable savings. And so we combined the two projects to see if we could put them out on the street at the same time, or at least that's a directive that we were provided. And that's the theory behind the two projects going out together.
Okay, we're going to move on to the Canal Park now. Will the park's MSTU be increased to cover construction?
I'll cover that one if you don't mind.
Question for sure.
The way it's set up for the MSTU funds is they were voter approved through St. Lucie County in what, 2004? 2002. What we do with the MSTU funds, which can only be used on park improvements or park projects, is we put together a list of priorities and then we go through the council and we pick out which projects we're going to work on. This year we're building Canal Park. We're going to do, I believe it's about $200,000 worth of improvements at a site that used to be a school that reverted back to the county called Winter Lakes. And then our other site that we're going to be working on is a dog park that we're going to build at Lingate Park. So what we do with those funds is we figure out where we think the different needs are and we put it toward that. The other part of the question is, can it increase? Depending on the final amount of the budget, if we had to, it may decrease or it could increase. Yes.
I routinely return to ramp after sunset, so I would still be forced to use Martin County ramps if gates are locked at sunset. All Martin County ramps are 24/7 public access. Canal Park is a long way from fishing and restaurants. Can keys be issued?
I don't really need to turn this over to the Parks Department. The answer is no, and you're, the old SOL, forgive me. So this is going to be closed and locked, and if people plan on being out past that time, they better be putting their boats in another location.
No overnight stays. What happened to the fishing boardwalk?
The the cleaning station?
No, it says the fishing boardwalk.
I'm going to let Brad finish it up, but I believe what happened is part of getting our permits, we ended up having to take those out in order to get the permits approved.
That's correct. That was a concession.
My name is Sherman Conrad. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director.
My name is Brad Keene. I'm the Assistant Director and have been project manager for the boat ramp project for a number of years. Sherman is correct. The concession in order to get one of our regulatory permits was to eliminate the fishing deck or boardwalk along the water's edge. We did that.
Is a stoplight planned at the boat ramp park entrance?
No, nothing whatsoever. What we are providing is a left turn storage lane and nothing more than that. A left turn storage, a left turn lane. When you're driving along a street and you see a place that says, if you want to make a left, move over into the left lane. Right now, there's just 2 lanes there. And so there's nowhere to move over. And if you're looking to pull into the park, you'd be blocking the through movement. So let me see if let's see if I see this here.
It's not storage, it's in park.
Yeah, you'll see right here is the left turn lane, and you're talking about a signal there, right? And the question is no, there's no traffic signal being proposed here. There is a storage lane, left turn lane, that's placed right here. So we widen this up to about 33 feet rather than 22 feet and leave room so that that vehicle can wait here for a car that's coming through without blocking all the through movements that are going to the west. This lane here is about 700 feet.
When this plan was inducted as Canal Park in 1999, was it to launch 70-plus boats per day or to serve also as a park for the community? Is it possible to trade parking spots for the park area? Otherwise, it does not benefit those who have water access for those who do not have boats in the, I'm taking its area. It gets a little small at the end, but I think you get the gist of the question there.
No, we're trying to understand.
Well, the first part of it is, was it, the original design in 1999, was there a plan to launch, what was the number? Do you have the number of boats that were anticipated to be launched and, or to serve also as a park for the community?
Mr. Bremer, in 1999, when the South Bend Lakes community held their neighborhood master plan meetings, the slide that you saw up there showing that map and the original conceptual plan for Canal Park, that's what it was. It was a concept to showing boat ramps on that property. It's been designated as a potential boat ramp site, as I said, at least since 1999. At that time, I personally was not a part of those planning meetings. I am not aware of any models or analysis that was done to determine the number of vehicle spaces or boat launch per day. Again, that plan was purely a master conceptual plan for the South Bend Lakes community. And with the second part of that question about how it can become a park for the South Bend community, we have park elements as part of this project. We have 3 pavilions for family use, families that can go there for picnicking. As Mr. Merson has said, we've eliminated 10 parking spaces and created additional green space so that when vehicles come in and they're aimed, if you will, across, directing their lights across the canal, there's no place for them to park there. They have to park facing north or facing east or west. We have enhanced landscaping on the north and south ends, so it will certainly be more visually appealing from across the canal. I would like to remind people that in that 1999 neighborhood study, where Jessica Clinton Park currently sits on that 20 acres, if you go back and think about it, that 20-acre tract at that point in time is depicted in that master plan as being a commercial site.
Correct.
So you could have had,
Publix.
you know, a Publix or a strip center, strip mall there, and now you've got a park. So
A 7-Eleven.
Why is South Bend, why in South Bend? Why not between Floresta and the river? It is all wooded. No one lives there. So it's that's
already-
I mean, why in South Bend? Why not between Floresta and the river?
We pretty much, I think, have answered that already, but basically it narrowed down between all the different site selection with being able to get permits. One of the spots was commercial, and it narrowed down to the best site.
Okay. There are about a dozen boat ramps in St. Lucie County. None of these ramps are in or near residents. The boat ramp to the west has a residence right next to it, and directly across there are residents. Why build next to residents? So this is your question.
I'm going to give it to Parks. It focuses back just up philosophically in terms of recreational facilities and residential neighborhoods.
to illustrate the point, if you look over here to the right on these boards, you have Oak Hammock Park. That is a boat ramp facility that is located with a residential housing on all 3 sides. So that's the second public ramp facility in the city that does not have access to the river, clearly showing that residents live completely around it. I'm sorry? That was built, I believe, in 2001.
Yeah. And a lot of our parks have houses all around them. Some of them, for instance, Swan Park is surrounded by houses and have lights.
Jessica Clinton. Will there be a section
Jessica
for
Clinton, too.
kayaks and canoes with a sandy section to launch these small boats?
At this point in time, the plans do not call for that type of activity. But there are floating docks that will rise and fall with the tide, so a kayak can be launched from the floating dock.
And that was the actual intent of the floating dock, so that you could do
Right.
just that. I think to answer the question, right down here.
Why the city attorney never contacted me about selling my lots at the corner of Appleby and Oak Ridge, the main entrance to the park. My property value will be greatly diminished.
I contacted them several years ago, and no one's ever got back with me. It was kind of a shelter.
So I assume we're talking about properties up here? Am I on the right property? To the left here? Okay. Sorry, you're down here. Okay. figure the first step is for us to understand what you're talking about. And
Jeff, should
we may not answer, but at least we'll know the question.
To us or to Roger, and we'll review it. Should we tell her just to send a letter and we'll re-review it?
You know, the answer in generic form, and then they'll give more specific, is the issue of acquisition of property and non-acquisition of property has always been a discussion that's gone on forever. Where, in fact, we're not actually requiring any additional property to build our improvement, the process is government doesn't acquire the properties. The question of whether in improvements that are on a road, whether it be widening a road, to some people would say that a reduction in value, or whether it's a park, some people would feel it was an enhancement, others feel it's a detriment, is a question that's been studied all over the country. But the ultimate answer is that the municipal government doesn't define change in traffic volumes or activities on private or government-owned land as a part of the element to acquire property. Yeah, and I can't answer that detail, but I can identify for you that, in fact, part of the element here was the long-term master plan of a community is to be aware of, hey, what we can build and not build. Okay.
How many existing homes and residents are being affected by engines if no mufflers and smell of burnt rubber? So.
Read that again.
Okay, yeah. How many existing homes, residences are being affected by engines if no mufflers and smell of burnt rubber?
I suspect this all ties back to the noise and the pollution associated with trucks pulling trailers and the potential impact on community and not being maintained. And in terms of air quality, I suspect is where this was come from. In terms of running the air quality numbers and the volumes here, we have no appreciable effect on the air quality within the area. That's simply what the numbers say.
The wetlands that are now the responsibility of the SRS HOA will be impacted. How will the city or Parks and Recs ensure these areas are not impacted by garbage, sewage, gasoline spills, etc.? Who will pay for this cleanup?
Bradley, I'm going to let you address, because I know this has to do with your enforcement and management of the park itself.
I can emphatically state that the design of the park by permit calls for the retention of all stormwater or water that falls on that property to flow into the on-site retention lake. So water is not going to seep into the wetlands. Either the conservation easement that we have set aside as part of the permitting process, or the 100-foot drainage right-of-way that is currently the city has that buffers the South River Shores neighborhood, or will it seep into the managed areas that the neighborhood protects? As far as overall maintenance of the park, you know, it will become a facility that is maintained under normal park operations. I feel we do an excellent job in maintaining our current inventory of parks and public lands. We will continue to do the same with this piece of property.
Yeah, why don't you just give your number to Patricia here?
I'll give you my card.
And she'll give you your card, so we'll be able to address that for you. Our taxpayer dollar is going to be used to maintain the boat ramp park.
What we will do is we're going to maintain the park within the existing staff that we have. There will be some money that will need to be budgeted. I'm going to say probably anywhere between maybe no more than $10,000, but probably $5,000 to $8,000 a year to do some of the maintenance, eventually some repairs. But we will maintain it within the park staff that we already have.
Is the park manned for daily control of all activities?
It will be an unmanned park
Yeah,
at this time.
Currently, the plan is unmanned, but in fact, if you'll take a look at many of these parks, what in fact they will do is on a regular basis, it will be, since it's now defined as an active facility rather than a passive one, it gets the normal rotation of the folks that come through that park on multiple visits throughout the day to ensure that it is being maintained appropriately.
Our
That's
staff,
very different than a passive facility where nobody shows up unless there's a complaint.
Brian's correct. Our staff will be roving or coming through several times a day. Also, between our police department, we have right now 3 park officers, and we'll make sure that we're keeping a visual eye on the site.
How will Canal be patrolled for controlling speed, trash, etc.?
First, part of the permitting required certainly in terms of how this facility was maintained. The second certainly is relative through the park department and their relationship with the state patrol in terms of how they take care of maintenance in the canal itself. Maybe Bradley?
To add to that, our police department does have a marine unit. If it is determined and found that the current or existing wake speeds are not being followed or followed by boaters, certainly as they come out of the boat ramp, our police department will act, and we will also highly support additional or strengthening the wake speeds through that area if it's found to be, if the existing speeds are found to be detrimental to not only the park site, but the rest of the canal.
That's my question. We've been told that entire canal is not a 5 mile per hour controlled speed. It is posted way down by the bridge, but it's not posted beyond that to the west.
Yeah, we'll check that. Yeah. Yeah, we'll check that. It would be no different than any narrow area. We don't want to see any erosion caused by the wake. So we'll investigate that and we'll see what we can do to ensure that it's a no wake zone. Okay. Is gate locked? Oh, is it gated, locked when closed?
Yes, it will be. Rivergate and Okamic are both gated. They will be locked.
Status of lights in park. How long will they stay on?
We have the luxury of adjusting the lights in terms of the amount of time they stay on. Typically, in our most of our park settings, we keep our parking lots lit up until about 12 midnight. If this is found to be obtrusive to the neighbors that live directly across the canal, we can certainly adjust those light times. That is not a problem. We would like to have enough ambient light in the park at night, throughout the night, so that our police department can visually see what's going on in the park as they make their rounds.
And the lights will be shielded too.
The lights are shielded in such a way that you should not get a glare or direct view of the lights from across the canal.
What are plans to accommodate larger boats and Southbend Bridge at ramp? Where are O&M costs for future boat ramp? What security will be at the ramp? So we covered that one, but so it's essentially what are the plans to accommodate larger boats at the ramp, and what are the O&M costs for future of the ramp?
In terms of size of boat, we're looking at an average of 22-foot boat is what we're trying to accommodate. Our parking spaces are about 40 feet deep. We have no plans to accommodate anything bigger than that. It's just not the appropriate use of this particular park.
How high is the bridge that comes into South Bend versus the water level for folks to go underneath to
I know it's marked, I'll find
got
out,
it.
but for some reason, I believe it was
It's 18.3.
18 or 19 feet? 18?
18.3 feet. I don't have that exact information, but according to the study that was done, it's in great shape. It's the life expectancy, I'm not sure. We would have to try to do a study on that and get a professional bridge consultant to give us that information.
Oh, please.
No.
Well, then it should have really been written down, because that's the process that we're trying to maintain. Yeah, but as long as you filled out a public to be heard card, absolutely, you're all set. Okay. Is there going to be a voting process of the boat ramp for the residents of South Bend, or is the decision etched in stone? The answer is we have already received our direction. We have already pursued this pursuant to direction that has been given to us. At this point, both projects, as I mentioned, they're slated to be constructed and they're slated to move forward.
Again, just from the consultant's perspective, each time that we've appeared at the council, and we've identified, I think 13 times, the question that we're continually asked is, why is this taking so long? And we're being blamed for not getting it built, not delaying it. So our current policy is here, as we've been directed by council, is for God's sakes, enough already. Please tell us why you haven't gotten this under construction, and we're doing everything we can to, in fact, complete these plans and get it on construction per the direction of council.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the final section of the meeting, which is public to be heard. This is not a section of the meeting where we're going to be answering questions, but this allows you to have your say with respect to your thought process. So the first individual is Richard Bartfay.
Jeff, are we going to do 3 minutes? We're going to set a time limit?
Oh yeah, and there's 11 people who wish to speak. So we really want to try and conclude this meeting. So we would ask that you consider keeping your remarks to 3 minutes. We would truly appreciate that. So Richard Bartfay, please. Is he here? Okay. All right. Richard Laguna. Oh. Is there a Richard Laguna, please? Okay. It's either, is it Michael D. Harrison? Yes, it is. Oh. That must be you.
Number one, I have to say I'm very sorry to see so many people have left, because when I walked in, this was a pretty full room. The first thing I want to know is how many people here are in favor of this boat ramp and don't call it a park? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In favor? In favor. No. In favor of it. Okay, how many people are against it? Well, it's pretty even, I guess. But one of the questions I had is, why does the city insist on doing this when so many people, especially in our community, are just dead set against it because it will devalue property for everybody? I really feel bad for the people who live in those houses just on the other side of it. I don't understand how the police are going to see anything with the landscaping, it being so far off. I don't know what they're going to see with ambient lighting even until midnight. I don't know what they could possibly see unless they're driving through. So I suppose they will have keys. Put my teeth back in, start over. And I still don't understand why we should spend so much money and ruin the property values as we see it in our neighborhood for so very few people. I don't see it as an enhancement to the community at all. It certainly is not a park. It's a pavement, it's a parking area, it's a parking lot with, it looks like 2 boat ramps, so I guess you say there's 4 there? There's actually 4 there? Looks like 2. But it's a parking lot, that's what it is. So call it what it is. Even Jessica Clinton Park is not a park, it's a sports field. And I feel very bad for those two people. And I got to tell you, I keep talking about the circles, and I've lived in Port St. Lucie for 25 years in South Bend. I built my house there 25 years ago. I lived in Stewart for 10 years before that, so I've been here about 35 years. Circles, I think circles are a great idea. They actually work in some situations. Confusion corner is not all that bad once you know what you're doing. But the new circles they put in there are absolutely ridiculous. The semis that are coming down to make deliveries, and I have a store in downtown Stewart, they can't get through it. They have to drive straight across that, and you said there's going to be an apron. And it's going to be, what, about 1.5 or 2 inch little lip on that apron? And that's going to allow the trucks with the boats and the trucks and the semis to drive kind of straight across it and not do the big circle. That's what that apron is for. And let me tell you, there's nothing scarier than you're coming around the circle and all of a sudden here comes a big semi driving across the apron. That happens on Colorado Boulevard in Stewart daily. And you drive there between 8:30 and 9:30 in the morning, you want to see traffic backed up. It's backed up across US 1. So all your studies, and I notice on your study, your little trucks don't bend at all. They're just little straight sticks. So I don't put any faith or confidence in engineers and their circles. I think circles are great in theory, and some of them actually do work. But it's not going to work when you have big trucks and boats and semi-trailers. It isn't going to work, and it's not going to enhance our neighborhood at all. Okay, thank you. I almost got it.
Hello? Okay. We're going to move on to the next person, Mrs. White.
I'm usually on the other side of this. I realize this isn't a time for questions, but I'm just going to express my concerns. One is there 2 lanes around the traffic circle from what I'm understanding? So one lane is for the go around and the other lane is to go straight.
Yes and no. The portion of the roundabout has a 2-lane segment and a portion has a 1-lane segment.
So it's confusing.
No, it won't be confusing
Okay.
at all because it'll be appropriate stripe. Left turn lane doesn't go through an intersection, it's a portion.
Okay, this is going to be my concern, is those cars going around the traffic circle, as they do down in Stewart, can decide that they want to not go around the traffic circle. Oh, I was supposed to go straight, and they have a trailer and a boat behind them, and you're in the other lane. Traffic circles are a nightmare when it comes to boats and trailers and semis. They just don't work. As I expressed in my concern about the traffic coming over the bridge at 40 miles an hour, hitting the intersection of Eagle and Peru, that's a big concern. I pray every time I leave that intersection now. I have to wait for the traffic light to change in order to get my brake to get out. We're not going to have a brake now. We're going to have constant traffic coming around the circle. And people are going to find that takes you to the turnpike easier. Oh, we don't have to wait for the light anymore. We can go around the circle and get right to the turnpike quicker. So that's going to bring more traffic. Oh gosh, I'm running out of time. I'm going to ask one more question, and I'm going to ask the city to consider taking this as a referendum to the citizens before they move forward. Thank you.
Next, we have Grace Mario.
Thank you. I had a lot to say, but what I do want to do is bring some clarity and take exception to a newspaper article that may have swayed some of you into believing that South Bend residents supported this idea of the roundabout. It is page 1 of the St. Lucie section of the Saturday paper. It says, meeting may include controversy. South Bend residents favor roundabout plans. Well, I have been a South Bend resident Lakes. Oh, it's right here, please. I brought the paper if anybody'd like to read it. It says there was never a poll taken. I have been a South Bend. My husband and I have been South Bend Lakes Residents Association. We have lived there for almost 8 years. We attended the January 2013 Residents Association meeting where Patricia spoke and the engineer spoke. We expressed our dissatisfaction with that plan at that time. Since January till today, if there is any South Bend resident, a resident here today that received a poll or was part of a poll, part of a survey, But this article says thus, this is the third paragraph. The roundabout is a hit with most South Bend residents. Well, I don't believe that's to be a true statement, but it says it in the paper, so do you believe it? Okay, so having said that, I would also like to support the fact that as a voter in this city, and I vote, my husband and I vote every election. As a voter, I would like to vote. And I'd like to know who voted to push this through and make this an informational meeting and not get our opinion. Did you ever bother to listen to our opinion? Thank you.
Next, we have Jerry Melville.
Good evening. I'll make it short. I've been a resident of City of Port St. Lucie since 1976. So I've been here probably before a lot of these people that were here. I'm an avid boater, an avid fisherman, and I'm here to support this park site as I would with any other park site in the City of Port St. Lucie. And I'm sorry that many people feel the way they do. I really am. But I don't think this is going to be a detriment to your community down south. Well, believe me, I wish it was in my backyard, because then I wouldn't have to tow my boat down to it. But I will certainly be using this facility, and I thank the city for moving forward on it. And I think I'm not that crazy about roundabouts myself. I understand some people's concerns with tractor trailers and boat trailers. But that's what we have to live with in today's world. And I think it's engineered correctly, and I think it'll work. I don't think you're going to see a bunch of big tractor trailers running through around that roundabout. You don't now. Like I say, I travel that road on a regular basis. My wife works down in the dentist office in Tesoro, so I'm down that way all the time. And I thank the city for moving forward. It's about time. Thank you.
Shirley Wright.
I guess I'm against the roundabout. I call it confusion corners or chaos. The traffic light is the best thing they ever put in there. And the opening to Becker Road brings more traffic. So with that traffic light, at least you get a chance to get out. You go roundabout. I went on Westmoreland and Morningside. And first Morningside was there, they go. I went. The next person should have been Morningside. No, the guy behind me pulls right out. So what do you think is going to happen at that traffic circle? It's going to be chaos. People are going to be mad. There's going to be accidents. It's going to be terrible. The people, but they won't go one-on-one, and that's what's going to happen. So I think that you're asking for a lot of trouble. You're going to hear horns blowing, and you're going to have a lot of accidents. I'm against the roundabout.
Ann Ruby.
First, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to answer my questions and the questions of the folks that live in my community that are present or have posed them through me. The only additional question or concern I have is that we frequently have situations in the C-24 canal that require either having the police come to deal with something, and most recently we had a boat that was tied to a crane ramp that broke loose and was floating in a C-24. And we called the police, and the police told us it was a South Florida water management problem. So what I would like to be able to go back and tell the residents that I represent is that once this new City Park goes in with the boat ramps, that we'd have better coordination between South Florida Water Management and the city police, because we need to know when we place the phone call that there's someone who's going to respond to situations that might occur. I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't know if they will, but I'd like to know that I can call the city police and it's not going to be deferred to South Florida Water Management, because they're not there on the weekends. They're not people we can call and get to respond. And I think that's fair. Thank you.
Julia Elkins.
Hi, I'm Jillian Elkins. I'm the president of Southbend Lakes Residents Association, and I'm going to clear a few things up right now. First of all, that newspaper article was a total misquote and exaggeration. When I was asked about this meeting, she said, well, how do you think the people feel about the roundabout? I said, some of the people I spoke to are for it, and that's a fact. That's not made up. Second of all, I said the main concern is the speeding down South Bend. It's a danger to the children, to the people on bicycles, to the sandhill cranes, to everything down there. And I know, speaking with Mr. Bowen, and I can assure he didn't speak tonight, but he promised he's going to make that a priority, and I believe him. Okay, because we met with him last week. Now, another thing I want to say, if you want to have a voice, start coming to some of the South Bend Residents Association meetings. Okay, second of all, you can see myself or one or two of the other board members, and we will be happy to take your name, address, phone number, and we will try and keep you informed. The way we will do that is, right now our website is temporarily down. The gentleman who has been working on it with me has not been available. He's been out of town. So as soon as that is up and running, you can have some information, and you can also post comments there. See me afterwards if you want more information and you want our website. It's simple. It's www.sblra, as in South Bend Lakes Residents Association.com. Thank you. Oh, wait, one last thing. I have time about the walls, that question. I met with the city manager along with our vice president of the association, and he assured us that South Bend Lakes is the model for the rest of the city, that it was going to be a priority. That was a former city manager. I still believe that these things are going to come to fruition, because I think the leaders now know what is best for us right now at this moment, until they prove me wrong. Okay, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay. Second of all, the walls. Those are our walls. We own them. The city does not. They were originally built and constructed and painted by some volunteers, and the walls are capable of being moved and stored. However, I understand that's not going to happen because of the expense or whatever. But what the city manager also said was the walls are going to be pretty much like it is now, except if you look how the shape goes like this, it'll have two of those, like, I call them humps, you know, but they're going to keep our logo, and they're going to keep our logo, and they're going to keep our colors. That was a promise, and I'm going to hold them to it, and there's a lot of other improvements. So as I said, see me or another member of South Bend, and we'll be happy to keep you informed. Thank you.
Liz, is it Mats or Nats? I'm sorry. Oh, hey, sorry.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We live in Pine Estates, which is the little blip there to the east. And I actually like the idea of a public space, the idea of parks and a boat ramp. But when I heard about this, my idea of it does not match what I see, because this does, as someone mentioned, look more like a boat ramp for a lot of boats than it does for a park, look like a park. And my concern is I'm doing math in my head, and perhaps my math is wrong, but as I see more than 70 spots and do the math at 20 minutes for a launch and 20 minutes for a load, times 4 spots, and that's 12 hours a day of one boat after another in that size of that canal and that size of that park, and I think my concern is that I know you've taken away 10 spots to put some pagodas in there and some park space, but once that is filled in with parking spots that are cemented in, there's no way of taking that back to have grass for any other purpose. And that traffic with that many boats seems like a lot of traffic. And I know we've talked a lot about the automobile traffic through the roundabout, but not so much about the traffic of the boats through that small area. And then my second concern is, regardless of how many boats are going through there, at dusk, I can imagine that there will be a lot of boats sitting there waiting to come back in, and nothing has been said about noise ordinances or anything like this, and what happens to backups of boats as they sit and wait, and if there's anything in place to address that. I don't know what the noise ordinances are on the canal or in the area, but that is of great concern to me, especially considering how much people sit on their boats when they're waiting and play their bass. So, thank you.
Linda, I'm sorry that I'm not even going to try the last name. I apologize. Garcio.
My name is Linda Garcio.
Okay. Sorry.
I've lived in Port St. Lucie for 33 years, so I've seen a lot of changes in the area. 31 was spent in the Oak Ridge neighborhood, which is directly north of the Canal Park. And there have been many, many changes in this span of time, and it has indeed made the city a place for all ages. All of these changes I see as progress and moving forward into the future, and the parks in the city have been built only after careful consideration and extensive research, none of the decisions being made overnight. Our city has grown tremendously in the last 10 to 12 years alone, and with growth comes progress and more opportunities to meet the needs of all of the residents of the city. The Southbend neighborhood did not even exist when we first moved here. We put up with a lot of land clearing by the developers, which stripped just about every single tree out there, and a lot of dust and dirt for many years. The constant construction traffic, the loss of a lot of wildlife, and the loss of access to the Spruce Bluff trails, the loss of fishing, which we did along the whole canal, the boat ramp, and most of all, the peacefulness that once existed here. But we sat back and watched that community grow and did not object to it, as we knew that progress is a necessity toward the growth of any large city. The traffic light that was installed on Oak Ridge and South Bend, I feel, has failed to meet the needs of those two streets, as congestion in this area is an everyday occurrence. A roundabout, I feel, will keep traffic flowing more efficiently. I am glad that the city has finally made the move to make the improvements to an already existing piece of property that once was for fishing and putting boats in the water. Surely it would be more pleasant to be looking at a landscaped, well-maintained park than a weed-infested, overgrown piece of property. And we are in desperate need of another boat ramp in this city with access to the river. And I feel that we are supportive of this project, a lot of us in our neighborhood, and we feel it will only enhance our neighborhoods and increase our property values and make it a more inviting place to live. Thank you.
And the last person tonight is Thomas S. And I'm sorry, I can't, yeah. Make that out of you.
Good evening. First thing is, I want to say I support the idea of the city having another boat ramp. Right now, we only have 2 ramps in the whole city. The ones that are in the county are not city parks. And there are, I don't know about there being a dozen, but if you probably include ocean access, there's some probably up in Fort Pierce that you can actually have a boat ramp that's in a state park, and some are in county parks. There may be a dozen. But as far as the city of Port St. Lucie, right now there's only 2. One's over there at the C-24, and then the other one's over there at Veterans, not Veterans, it's the park right there on Veterans Boulevard. So anyhow, and this particular park will give you both ocean and river access. So I am in favor of this park. My comment earlier had to do with kayaks, and launching a kayak from a floating dock is a challenge sometimes. I would prefer a sandy beach, but I could probably, I have lived with the one over there at, on Veterans Memorial Boulevard, but it's a challenge with the traffic of boats because you can't get in and out as fast as you can get with a boat, with a car backing in. So I hope you could set aside maybe a sandy area for kayaks and canoes. I see that one area adjacent to where your boat ramps are, that maybe you could take even a small space and designate it to launch boats because it'll be away from the main traffic but still access to the river. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity of using this park. Thank you.
That brings us to the end of the meeting, and I want to thank everybody for their attendance. I also want to thank you for your civility and your courtesy towards staff. I really appreciate that, and thank you very much for your participation.